For today's math lesson, we again are looking at how we can turn fractions into decimal numbers or convert fractions to decimal numbers. And the strategy that we're going to use today is going to be very helpful for us later on when we are looking at how percentages relate to decimal numbers and to fractions. So I'm very excited about today's strategy. So the first step, the first thing that we have to do is we have to find a number that we can multiply by the bottom part of a fraction to turn it into 10 or 100 or 1,000 or any one followed by zeros. So find a number that we can multiply by the denominator to make it 10, 100, or 1,000. And then, because we are creating equivalent fractions, step 2 is that we have to multiply both the top and the bottom by the same number to keep those fractions equivalent. And then lastly, we have to write down just the top number, putting the decimal point in the correct spot, which is one space from the right-hand side for every zero in the bottom number. For example, right here below, we have the conversion of 3/4 into a decimal. So to do this, we can multiply 4 by 25. And when we multiply 4 by 25, we are going to reach that 100 that we are aiming at. So because we multiplied 4 by 25, we then multiply 3 by 25 so that we create a fraction that is equivalent. And when we multiply 3 by 25, we reach 75. And that means that 75 hundredths is an equivalent fraction to 3/4. So our final step is to write down the number 75, just the top number, and then we have to write down the decimal point, placing the decimal point one space from the right-hand side for every zero in the bottom number. So there were 2 zeros in the bottom number, which means our decimal point goes 1, 2 places here, and we have 75 hundredths. Let's try using that strategy for another question. For this question, we are going to look at 2/5. Now, if you can remember, what we have to do is make the denominator, the bottom number, we have to turn it into something that is a 1 with zeros behind it. And I can easily turn my 5 into a 10. And I do that by multiplying it by 2, and that gets me 10. And then, because I did it to the bottom number, I must do it to the top number to create an equivalent fraction. And 2 times 2 is 4. And now 4/10, written as a decimal number, is, well, when I just read that number, I know it's 4/10. 4/10. Or if I were to follow the steps, I would write down the 4, and then I would move the decimal point over 1 to the left for every 0 that is in my denominator. So it would be 4/10. Let's do one more question for good measure. Let's say that we are given something like 13/25. Now, for a question like this, we can look at that fraction and say, well, I can convert that into a decimal number without my calculator because I know that 4/4 make $1. So I can simply multiply 25 by 4, do the same thing to my my numerator as I have done to my denominator. So I'm going to multiply 13 times 4 as well. And 13 times 4 is 52. So I know that an equivalent fraction of 13/25 is 52 hundredths. Now, even just saying the fraction 52 hundredths, that is exactly how I say the decimal number 52 hundredths. So I can have that converted just by reading the fraction 52 hundredths, 52 of 100, 52 hundredths. It's the same thing. But if I wanted to follow the steps or check my work, what I could do is write 5-2, and then I could move my decimal point one spot to the left for every 0 that is in my denominator. And I would go 1, 2, right, redraw my decimal point there, and there it is, 52 hundredths. For your practice today, this is the question. Sarah had to find equivalent pairs of fractions and decimals for her homework. On her way to school, she dropped her bag, and now they are all mixed up. Help her match equivalent pairs before the bell rings. So you need to match up all the equivalent pairs in this mixed group of fractions and decimals. So I would convert all of them into decimals, or I would convert all of them into fractions, and then you can more easily find the equivalent pairs. When you're done this, you need to choose one pair that you found and prove that they are equivalent using pictures, numbers, or words. This question is also in the Google Classroom in today's assignment folder.